hadn't planned on stopping by. Just needed to drop off a package that had been delivered to the wrong door. 5 minutes, I told myself. Quick knock, polite smile, done. Her apartment always smelled faintly like brewed coffee and some kind of citrus soap. Even standing in the hallway, you could catch it. That day was no different. She opened the door in a gray sweater, sleeves pushed up to her elbows, hair tied loosely like she hadn't really meant for anyone to see her. "Oh," she said, blinking like she had to place me. This was left at my place. I held the box out. She took it, her fingers brushing mine in that way you don't mean to notice but do. "Thanks," she said. But she didn't move to close the door. Just stood there, balancing the package against her hip. I shifted my weight, glanced down at the floor, then back at her. "No problem. Happens all the time with these buildings." She smiled barely. It was more in her eyes than her mouth. And then, after a pause that felt longer than it was, she tilted her head. "You want some coffee? I just made a pot." I should have said no. I had nothing important to do, but still I should have. Instead, I nodded. "Sure." For a minute. Her place was quiet except for the hum of the heater. A small stack of unopened mail sat on the counter. A folded blanket half slipped from the couch. She poured coffee into 2 mismatched mugs, slid one toward me. "You still take it black, right?" she asked. I blinked. "You remembered?" She shrugged, stirring hers with a spoon that clicked against ceramic. "You mentioned it once. Downstairs laundry room, I think." I tried not to stare at her hands as she set the spoon aside. Thin gold band still on her finger, though I knew she lived alone now. We talked about nothing. Weather, the noise from the upstairs neighbors, how the laundry machines were always breaking down. The kind of talk that covers silence without erasing it. Every so often, her eyes caught mine and held, like she was checking if I was still listening. I was, too much maybe. When my phone buzzed on the counter, I ignored it. Some group chat, probably. Instead, I folded the paper napkin she'd set under my mug. Once, twice, then again, until it was a neat little square. She noticed, smirked slightly. "Nervous habit?" she asked. "Guess so." She leaned back against the counter, arms crossed. "Could be worse." We both laughed softly, but it didn't sound like a joke. Time passed without me marking it. When I finally stood, setting the mug in her sink, I said, "Thanks for the coffee." She walked me to the door, leaning one shoulder against the frame. I thought that was it, that we'd retreat back into our separate lives. But as I reached for the handle, she spoke. "Hey," she said quietly, "next time, don't wait for the mail to get mixed up." I froze, hand on cold metal, heartbeat suddenly too loud. She didn't say it like an invitation, more like a suggestion she didn't want to explain. "Okay," I managed. The door clicked shut behind me. I stood in the hallway longer than I should have, phone still buzzing in my pocket, the taste of her coffee sharp in my mouth. That night, I almost texted her, just a thank you. I typed it out, deleted it, typed it again. My thumb hovered. The words looked strange, too plain. The screen dimmed before I sent anything. But I couldn't shake the sound of her voice. "Next time," and that was the first time I realized I might actually want there to be one. I saw her again 2 nights later. Not planned, not expected. I was coming up the stairwell with a sack of groceries, fumbling my keys, when her door opened. She had a cardigan pulled tight, like she'd only stepped out to grab the mail. "Out late," she said, nodding at the bag in my arms. "Yeah, ran out of milk." She smiled at that. Small, like she wasn't laughing at me so much as recognizing the ordinariness of it. She held her door open a little wider. "You can put that down if you want. I've got tea on." I hesitated. The same hesitation as before. Then I stepped inside. Her kitchen light was softer this time, only one lamp on in the corner. She poured hot water over 2 bags of chamomile and slid one across the counter toward me. "You always seem to catch me when I don't look my best," she said. I looked up. "You look fine." The words felt too forward, so I covered it by tearing the paper tag off my tea bag, dropping it on a napkin. She noticed. She always seemed to notice. She told me she hated sleeping with the TV on but did it anyway. Said silence kept her up more than noise. I told her I did the opposite, left my phone face down and forced myself to wait till morning to check it. We both laughed quietly, realizing how much we'd built around avoiding our own thoughts. Then she said, "My son used to do that. Hide his phone under his pillow." Thought I didn't notice. It hit me then, her son was just a couple years younger than me. We never spoke of him directly, and she didn't linger now, but the words sat between us. I stirred my tea slowly, the spoon clinking too loud. That's when the weight of it crept in. The gap. The divorce she never mentioned but everyone in the building knew about. The ring she still wore, maybe out of habit, maybe out of something else. I thought of people whispering, neighbors making their guesses. I thought of my own mother, what she'd say if she knew I was here. And still I stayed. When the tea cooled, she moved to the living room. I followed, sitting on the opposite end of the couch. A folded basket of laundry rested on the coffee table. She picked up a shirt, smoothed the fabric, set it back down without folding. Her hand brushed mine when she reached for another piece. Neither of us pulled away right away. She looked at me then, really looked. Not long, just enough to hold me there. Later, walking back to my apartment with the taste of chamomile still on my tongue, I thought about that brief contact. How her hand had been warm, steady. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me, and maybe that was the risk. The next time it wasn't in her apartment. It was the laundry room. Half basement, flickering light overhead, machines thudding like a heartbeat. I was pulling damp shirts from the dryer when she walked in carrying a basket on her hip. She stopped when she saw me. "Oh, you're here." "Yeah." I tried to sound casual. "Didn't think anyone used this late." She set the basket down, smoothed her sleeve, then crouched to load the washer. Her hair fell loose from the clip. I found myself staring, then looked back at my half-folded clothes. For a while, it was just the sound of quarters clinking, water rushing in. She sat on the edge of the plastic chair across from me, arms crossed, foot tapping. "You're quiet tonight," she said. I shrugged. "Long day." Truth was, I didn't know what to say anymore. Every word felt like it risked more than it should. Her phone buzzed on the chair beside her. She glanced at it, frowned. A name I didn't catch lit up the screen. She let it ring out. "Friend?" I asked before I could stop myself. She shook her head. "Doesn't matter." And there it was again, the closed door. Something private I wasn't supposed to walk through. I folded another shirt, too neat, too precise. The door banged open, and one of the upstairs neighbors strolled in. Middle-aged guy I'd seen smoking out front. He nodded at me, then at her. "Evening," he said, like he knew something we didn't. She straightened, smiled politely, then busied herself with the detergent. I felt my shoulders tighten. For a moment, I thought of how it must look. Me and her in this empty room, laundry baskets touching. When he left, the silence returned sharper than before. "You don't have to worry," she said finally, not looking at me. "People always think they see something. Usually they don't." Her words were light, but her hands trembled slightly as she tore open the dryer sheet box. I wanted to say, "And if they do?" but it stuck in my throat. We finished folding in silence. When I stood to leave, she reached out and caught my wrist, just for a second, then let go. Wait, she said softer. Can you? She stopped, exhaled. Never mind. I stayed anyway, waiting for words she didn't give. Her eyes met mine, tired but steady. The hum of the machines filled the space between us. I thought she might step closer, or maybe I would. The thought hung there, unfinished, like the sentence she'd swallowed. When I finally walked out into the cold stairwell, I could still feel the faint pressure of her fingers on my wrist. We hadn't crossed the line. Not yet, but I knew how close we'd come. And I couldn't decide if I was relieved or disappointed that it was late afternoon when I saw her outside, sitting on the bench near the mailboxes. She had no mail in her hands, just a thermos balanced on her knee. I almost walked past, but she looked up at me and held the glance long enough that stopping felt like the only option. Done with work? She asked. Yeah, just got back. The sun was low, sharp light cutting across the pavement. I sat at the far end of the bench. Too much space, but safer that way. She unscrewed the lid of her thermos, took a sip, then offered it out.
There.
It's still warm. I hesitated. Then I took it, the heat pressing against my palm. I drank. It wasn't about the tea. For a while we said nothing. Kids shouted in the distance, a car horn somewhere far off. Then she said, I saw you with your friend yesterday, the one with the baseball cap. I nodded slowly. That's just Evan. He was giving me a ride. She nodded too, eyes fixed on the sidewalk. You seemed close. It wasn't an accusation, but it wasn't casual either. I almost laughed. He's just a friend, right? She said, tightening the thermos lid. But her shoulders gave her away, too stiff, like she was holding something down. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. Why do you care? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Her breath caught. Then she said very quietly, because I notice more than I should. I turned to look at her. She was staring straight ahead, jaw set, eyes glassy in the light. Something opened in me then, a mix of relief and panic. I wanted to ask her what she meant, but I already knew. She laughed once, short, sharp, not amused. God, listen to me. I sound ridiculous. She stopped, started again. You're too young to get tangled in whatever this is. I swallowed hard. And you're too. I didn't finish. She turned then, finally meeting my eyes. There was no smile this time, just something raw, stripped. Do you ever think about it? She asked. The world narrowed to the sound of my heartbeat and the faint scrape of wind across the parking lot. I didn't answer right away. Couldn't. My hand tightened around the thermos, still warm. Her question hung there between us, heavy and impossible, the kind of thing you couldn't take back once spoken. I looked at her, really looked, at the faint lines around her eyes, the way her sweater sleeve had slipped just enough to show her wrist, the smallest tremor in her fingers. I opened my mouth, then closed it, and that's where we left it. Her question still in the air, unanswered. After that afternoon on the bench, I expected things to move forward or backward. Something. Instead, everything froze. 2 days passed. I didn't see her in the hall. Didn't catch the sound of her TV late at night. Even the laundry room felt emptier than usual, as if she'd scheduled her life around avoiding mine. I told myself it was coincidence. But by the 4th day, it didn't feel like that anymore. One evening, I spotted her in the parking lot, unloading groceries from her trunk. Normally she would have waved, maybe made a joke about how I never carry bags properly. This time she didn't look up, just gathered her things quickly, shut the trunk, and disappeared inside. I stood there, keys in hand, pretending to check my phone. But it was obvious something had shifted. Later that night, I heard voices through the thin walls. A man's voice, low even, hers, lighter than I'd heard it in weeks. I couldn't make out words, just the rhythm of conversation, the occasional burst of laughter. I turned the TV on to drown it out, but the sound stayed with me. The next morning, her door was ajar, a pair of boots by the mat that weren't hers. For a second, I thought about knocking, asking if she needed anything, pretending I had mail mixed up again. But my hand stayed at my side. I walked past. The silence between us grew heavier. I skipped the laundry room even when I needed it, stopped lingering near the mailboxes. I thought if I kept my distance, maybe it wouldn't matter as much. But it did. One night, I finally caved and typed out a message. "Hey, haven't seen you around. Everything okay?" I stared at the words. Too simple, too exposed. I deleted them. Tried again. "Thanks for the tea the other day. I've been meaning to return the favor." Deleted that too. The cursor blinked. Waiting. I set the phone down, face down, like that would make it easier. I saw her once more at the stairwell. She was dressed to go out, coat buttoned, hair neatly pinned. For the first time, she looked untouchable. She nodded at me, polite, distant. "Evening," she said. That was all. No pause. No lingering. Just footsteps fading down the stairs. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. The kind of pause that keeps you half-reaching, waiting for the page to turn. I stood at my own door with my keys in hand, listening to the emptiness on the other side of hers. I didn't knock. It was raining the night it finally happened. Not a storm, just steady drizzle, enough to make the pavement shine under the streetlights. I was carrying trash down to the bins when her door opened. She stood there in the doorway holding an empty mug. She looked tired, but not the kind of tired you fix with sleep. We both froze. I almost kept walking, but then she spoke. "Wait," she said. Her voice wasn't sharp, more like a hand reaching out in the dark. I followed her inside. The kitchen light was soft, a single bulb above the sink. She set the mug down, rubbed her arms like she was cold. "I've been avoiding you," she admitted, staring at the counter. I stayed near the doorway, unsure if stepping closer would help or make it worse. "I noticed," I said quietly. She let out a breath, laughed once without humor. "It's not fair to you, any of this. I'm old enough to know better." Her words stung, though I knew she wasn't wrong. I pressed my palms against the door frame, grounding myself. "You don't have to explain," I said. But she shook her head, finally turning to face me. "Ido, because you're here. And I don't know why I let that happen." Her eyes were raw, unguarded. Something in me cracked then, the restraint, the second-guessing. "I kept thinking it was just me," I said. "That maybe I imagined it. The way you looked at me, the way you—" My voice trailed off. She stepped closer. Not much, just enough that I could see the faint tremor in her lip. "You didn't imagine it," she said. The silence after that was unbearable and perfect at the same time. I wanted to close the space between us, but I didn't move. Neither did she. The choice hung there, sharp-edged. "If we—" I started but couldn't finish. "I know," she said softly. Her hand reached for the counter, steadied itself. Mine twitched at my side, almost reaching for hers. Almost. Finally, she whispered, "I don't want to lose myself in something I can't explain." I nodded. My throat felt tight. "And I don't want to make your life harder." We stood like that, admissions hanging in the air, nothing more to dress them up. Then she did something small, but it felt enormous. She reached out and touched my sleeve. Barely there, just her fingers pressing into the fabric. But it was enough. I looked at her. She looked back. And then she smiled. Tired, sad, but real. "Okay," she said. It wasn't an answer. It wasn't closure. But it was something. I smiled back, just once. And for the first time, it felt like we'd both said everything we could without saying too much. It had been months. Not long, not short. Just enough that the world felt heavier before the mornings, and lighter after a quiet night. I saw her again on a Tuesday, 8:47 a.m., exactly when I usually stopped for black coffee at the corner shop. She was already there, seated with a small cup of chamomile, reading a book she always left open to the same page. She looked up, caught my eye, and smiled, not like the first time, reserved, hesitant, but the kind of smile that said, "We've been here before and we're still here now." I slid into the seat across from her. We didn't need to talk about the months apart. The silence carried its own weight, like the hum of the espresso machine in the background. "You didn't spill coffee on anyone today," she said, teasing lightly. "Small victories," I said. Our mornings settled into routine. We met sometimes at the bench near the mailboxes, tea in hand, words quiet and deliberate. Other days, she joined me for laundry or stayed to fold shirts in companionable silence. The small gestures, the way she remembered my black coffee, the thermos I carried that I sometimes forgot to refill, became markers of our lives intersecting. We didn't rush. We didn't declare anything. Just leaned into the rhythm of each other's presence. One afternoon, I found her waiting for me at the stairwell. She held a folded blanket, hands brushing mine as she handed it over. We paused. The world continued around us, indifferent, but in that moment it was ours. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For being here," I said, soft enough that she had to lean closer to hear. She smiled. The faint tremor in her fingers was gone. She pressed her hand briefly into mine, just a touch, not possession, not demand, just acknowledgement. Evenings were simple. Shared dinners, quiet music, or the occasional book traded across the table. No grand gestures, no dramatic confessions. Just the careful accumulation of everyday life. Coffee at 8:47 a.m., the click of her keys in the hallway, the hum of a dryer spinning in the basement. Love didn't arrive in fireworks. It arrived in the way she always knew my order, in the pauses where we didn't speak but understood each other anyway. One night, I found myself sitting on the bench outside her door, looking at the faint glow from her window. She stepped outside with a cup of tea, and we sat in silence. I thought about the first time we'd shared tea there, the awkward glances, the unsent messages, the near misses. She leaned back against the railing and said, quietly, "It's good, isn't it?" I nodded. "Yeah, it's good." And that was enough, because sometimes love isn't about declarations. It's about the soft acknowledgement that someone notices you, stays with you, and understands you even in silence. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?